Hello everybody, today we are doing something a little bit different, something I've never really done before. I am going in unscripted to talk about the Voices of Wrestling 2021 Match of the Year list. For those of you that don't know, this list is probably the most comprehensive, shall we call that, survey attempt to collate the opinions of various members of what we might call the wrestling media. And by wrestling media, that's a definition that they, by design, try to keep as loose as possible to invite as many people as possible into the ballot. Basically, everybody submits their top 10 matches of the year. Based on where you rank, the match receives a certain amount of points, and based on the points, it gets ranked into this top 100 list. This was my first year submitting a ballot, so I thought I would take some time to take a look at what everyone at the website came up with, or rather the collated results from everyone who submitted a ballot. And there's a few things that I obviously know going in. I have been, full transparency, I have been following each drop. The list drops in chunks of 25 for the past week, and I've been following them, so I'm not going in blind. I generally know where all the matches are placed, and even before this, I had a pretty good idea of what was going to be Match of the Year anyway. Obviously, I'm going into this knowing that I will be disagreeing with most, if not many, of the top picks in here. Just historically, knowing what kind of matches are typically ranked high in the VOW Match of the Year list, I know that there's going to be a lot of disagreements, so I'm not trying to roast anybody's opinion or their ballot in doing this. I'm just using the list as a reference point, trying to glean some analysis from it, what surprises me, what I think, basically, things that I thought basically fit into what I expected, and talk about some matches that appear to be quite beloved by the larger wrestling sphere. Now, one of the interesting things about the VOW Match of the Year list is that part of the reason that they wanted to kind of expand the number of people who submit ballots every year is because they want to get as diverse a list as possible. And that gets kind of difficult in the upper reaches because everyone can only pick 10 matches. The more people you open this up to, generally you're gonna see matches from the wrestling that is most widely discussed or easiest to access for most people. You're gonna see a lot of AEW on that list because that's currently pretty much the hot promotion to discuss online. You're gonna see a lot of New Japan. VOW spent a lot of their existence really hyping up New Japan, and even though there's been some backlash to modern New Japan and where the product is now, there's still a lot of love for those particular workers and that style from this website. Alright, so these are just some things I know going in before we really dig into this. So we'll see. Alright, I'm gonna go through it. For anybody who wants to know what my personal ballot was, it's exactly the top 10 from my 2021 year-ender video. Check that video out. I will be discussing some of my picks as we go through the list. But yeah, check out my 2021 The Year's Best in Wrestling video if you want to see my top 10 without being spoiled. Otherwise, let's get right into it. Let's check out the Voices of Wrestling 2021 Top 100 Matches of the Year. Here's some interesting statistics. This year, even with the pandemic, we had 176 voters across 27 different states in America and 17 countries. And there I am in the Philippines. 42 of the voters this year were first-time voters, and that includes me as well. The average age of the voters was 32. 310 unique matches from 63 different promotions were nominated, so that's a pretty decent spread, but you'll find that it gets a little narrower when we get into the upper reaches of the list, which is to be expected because we're looking at consensus, and the things that are most seen will obviously get the most eyes on it, be the most discussed. I'm not going to go through all the honorable mentions, there's just too many. But some of my picks were in here. One in particular that I really wanted to note was at 101, which is exactly the cutoff before we get into the main list. Number 101 was actually Daniel Garcia versus JD Drake from Limitless Wrestling's Vacation Land Cup 2021. Only 3 people voted for it on their top 10 ballots, with the highest placement being 6th place. I believe I was the highest vote on Garcia versus JD Drake. I'm generally, as far as I'm aware, I'm generally one of the higher people on that match in terms of where I have it in the year. So yeah, it's a real shame. If I had put it like 1 slot higher, it maybe would have made it onto the list, but I wanted to be honest. I didn't really want to go into this thinking about gaming the points or anything. I just submitted my list as it was. Here we go into the number 100 was Miro versus Eddie Kingston. I think that's a little low, to be fair. It's one of my favorite matches from 2021. It didn't make my list of 20, but it was certainly top 50 for me at least. Probably top 30 if I'm remembering correctly. So and to see that it's like beaten by Fuego del Sol versus Hook is, I understand the impulse to kind of celebrate Fuego del Sol versus Hook. But I don't know. I didn't think it was a great match. It was just an effective match, and those two things are not necessarily the same. This is one of the things that definitely jumped out of me. June versus Higuchi is only at number 98. I know there were a lot of people who didn't like the hand selling in this match. I didn't have a problem with it. Highest vote clearly is 3rd. I believe that's me, and only one other person had it on their ballot, which is a shame. I think it's one of the best matches of the year. And I'm kind of flabbergasted that we have some of these picks above it. Gargano versus Kushida, I can't say I watched that, but I'm not particularly interested in anything that Gargano has been doing this year. Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan, way too low on this list, personally, if you were to ask me. The Fastlane match is obviously better, but this was still one of the best matches of the year. It's in my top 20. Deeb versus Riho was very good. I didn't think it was great. I have not seen any of these quite lauded Aussie Open matches. I've heard about their stuff with the Velocities, for example. I don't know how this got on the list. I can't lie to you. Yeah. I'm shocked Amazing Red versus Will Ospreay got this high. I didn't know it was getting much traction, but I guess I just don't see the kind of circles that are really in love with Will Ospreay these days. And we have the Lucha Brothers at the end to wrap it up, and we'll be talking much more about them later on. 75 to 51. No thank you. I don't really watch a lot of Matt Taven, and I can't say that I regret that. I love this match. This was in my top 20. Ricky Marvin versus Black Terry. Only 2 people voted, which I think is a shame. I think it's really quite excellent. Definitely check out Ricky Marvin versus Black Terry. I'm so glad someone had it at number 2. I can only imagine it's JR Goldberg, who's part of Segunda Caída. This is very much an on-brand match for all the people at Segunda Caída, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's a fantastic match. I did not like the Shingo Zack Sabre Jr. title match. I did think their G1 was quite great. I thought the title match sacrificed a lot of what made it great. I'm pretty sure I saw this Ice Ribbon title match as well. Again, it didn't do much for me personally. Usually when it's Ice Ribbon, it's only Suzu Suzuki that really catches my eye. I loved June versus Takeshita. This feels like a pretty fair rating, maybe even a little bit high, but yeah, that was a great match. Here we have one of the matches I feel is far too low. Garcia versus Wheeler Yuta showed up on 6 ballots. Highest vote at 3rd, which I think is a bit high, but I think it absolutely deserves a little recognition. I'm glad it was able to get on, even though I feel it's a little bit low. I think it's quite an accomplishment. I talked about it in my top 20 video. I hope more people go out of their way to see it, seeing it on this list. This also feels a bit high for Eruption versus Takeshita and Mao. But, you know, I thought it was a great match. I don't mind its placement here. I can't say I watched Shun versus Kaito Ishida. I believe Chris O'Brien was very, very fond of this match. It's quite high on his 2021 Match of the Year list. Check that out. I don't want to spoil its exact placement in case you haven't seen his video. Definitely see that. Yeah, this was always going to get on there, I guess. People really love what Matt Cardona's been doing in GCW. I can't say that I'm particularly enthralled by it. But they got that heat. They got that heat that they wanted, so can't say it wasn't effective, I guess. I get it. People don't love Ueno versus Okada. I'm glad 7 people had it on their ballots. I wish it was a little higher on this list, but I know it's 2 young guys doing main event Japanese style, so there's always going to be a few flaws in there, and I'm just glad it got on the list this high to begin with. Sorry, I don't like Kenny Omega this year. No, I did not watch this match, but I'm almost certain I didn't miss much. Just knowing how I felt about Kenny Omega this past year in general. And we end with Nakajima versus Masa Kitamiya. I believe this is their cage match, which I never really finished. I can't say it was quite gripping to me personally. So maybe I missed out just based on what else I've seen of Nakajima this year. I don't think I did, but you know, it seems to clearly have worked for quite a few people. All right, moving on to the top half of the list, number 50 to 26. Here we have Harashima versus Yuji Okabayashi with only 4 votes, but clearly these 4 voters had it quite high that it got to this point. It was definitely in my top 10. I am struggling to remember the exact placement, but I do love it. I think that it made 30 minutes fly by. You want to hear me talk about it more? I wrote about it for Fanbyte, and I talk about it in my year-end video, so check that out. It's a great match. I think it's probably way too low, but you can clearly see that with only 4 votes, and someone had it as their match of the year, those that did vote for it think incredibly highly of it. So I think that speaks to itself. No, I'm not gonna watch more Edge versus Seth Rollins matches. Thank you very much. No offense to Edge. I'm just not doing it. Sorry. This was definitely the better of the Shingo versus Zack matches. I thought it was quite great. I think this is a fair enough ranking. Probably a little too high, but I thought it was definitely the better of their matches and one of the better New Japan matches of the year in general. This was a fun match, like right on the borderline of great. Again, I think it's a little bit high, but I understand why it was able to garner these votes. Not only is it quite interesting on paper, you have these 4 young guys from Cyberfight's 2 biggest promotions. It's also available free on YouTube, so I guess it was able to distribute through there. And it's just a really easy match to consume. You don't really need a lot of backstory. You kind of just jump into it, and it's pretty much all action. I can understand why it got this high. I enjoyed Violento Jack versus Masashi Takeda. I don't know if I'd have it in my top 50, but it was a great match. I don't hate its placement here. I love that Black Terry versus Mr. Condor got this high. This was a late in the year entry. As you can see, it came out in December. It happened on December 5th. It released on IWTV probably a few weeks after that, and it is delightful. Black Terry and Mr. Condor just kind of brawling through a junkyard, punching each other in the face, headbutting each other, chopping each other. It's excellent stuff. It didn't make my top 20, but I think it's great, and I don't think it has a lot of eyes on it currently. 3 people voted it. There's 2 people who have it in their match of the year. I can only assume that's the Segunda Caída people who are really high on these kind of very gritty lucha brawls. If I check, yeah, JR Goldberg was the one who wrote the blurb for this. I really recommend this match. Please go out of your way to check it out. I wouldn't have it in my top 50, but I'm glad it's here because I think this is one of those matches that people really wouldn't have heard about otherwise. So if this is your first time hearing about Black Terry vs. Mr. Condor through this video, I highly recommend it. Please do check it out. This match needs more eyes on it. I'm glad it made the top 50. June 7? I don't even remember. This must be the Dominion match. See, I completely forgot about it. This is the Dominion match where Shingo won the title. Didn't like it. Sorry. I love that Shingo won. That was a good moment. But the match, bell to bell, didn't do anything for me. It's Okada in 2021. What can I say? It's not something that's gonna do anything for me, unfortunately. Yuji versus Higuchi, great match. Just missed my top 20. I believe I have it. I believe it's in my honorable mentions in my year-end video. I wrote a whole article about why I don't think the Mania main event is worthy of this particular spot. So check that out on Fanbyte instead. Number 40, man. Someone had it as their match of the year. I'm shocked only 4 people had it on their ballots, because this is a powerhouse. This is genuinely one of the best things the WWE has done all decade. I guess it's hurt because it's in the Thunderdome. It has a screwy finish. All of these were things that kind of diluted it for me on first viewing, but when you go back, I think it absolutely holds up. Yeah, I wish this was higher. I definitely wish this was higher. This is top 10 material. This is I can't remember if I had it top 5, but it's definitely top 10 material. The best WWE match of the year, by far. By far. No, I'm not watching an hour of TJP. I have friends who hype this up quite a bit. Can't say that I watched it. I was kind of scared away by the length on it. I believe it's like 37 minutes or something close to 40 or even higher than that. Maybe I'll check it out because I know they're having a rematch in PWA. Maybe I'll check this out eventually to kind of, if I'm planning to watch the rematch, we'll see. I mean, this was good. This is probably one of Kenny's best matches all year, genuinely. But I don't think it's top 50. I think it struggled to make a top 150 for me personally. Come on, guys. It was not... this was one of those matches that just got worse the more I thought about it, honestly. It was not good, unfortunately. Mox and Kenny did try. They definitely tried with the ring work, but everything else around them was really failing them. And I wouldn't have this list on here at all. This match on here at all. Someone has it as their match of the year, which is incredibly surprising to me, given its kind of reputation, its association with the very very silly post-match angle. The best Young Bucks match of the year. Probably a little high, but I don't hate having it on the list. Definitely quite high, but you know. I think it's still quite a great match. Another great match. Also a little high, I guess. This was not my favorite of the Nomura Big Japan matches. But what can you do? He breaks his head open on a headbutt. Am I gonna quibble about it being at number 30? Not too much. Very good match. I quite enjoyed it. A lot of my friends did not. I could understand what they were getting at. They felt that MJF was wrestling a little too sympathetically. They didn't like that he was the one having his leg worked over. In the moment, I thought this was actually quite great, but it just didn't really stick with me. I like MJF's bit of trying to beat people with a side headlock takeover. I think that's quite funny. I think that fits his character incredibly well. So, there you go. Good match. I don't think it's top 30. This is just straight up one of the most impressive matches of the year. Like, it should not be as great as it is, given that it's happening in front of a hollow Tokyo Dome. And no build going into it either, because Tanahashi was replacing Ibushi. Yeah. Incredibly impressive match. I think, positioning-wise, this is about right of where this should be if we're having a top 100 of the year. 12 votes. There was a time this would have been in my top 10, so I can completely understand having it this high. I believe I enjoyed this match, actually. I thought I did say this was quite great at the time. I don't remember much of it, but I do think it was probably Ospreay's best match of the year. And that's saying something, given I've not been a fan of Will Ospreay's 2021. I thought this worked. I thought it worked really well. I wouldn't have it in a top 100, but yeah, generally VOW voters quite like Ospreay. So I can see why it's this high. This feels far too low. I think this was easily the best women's match in the world all year. It's free on YouTube right now, so I highly recommend that everyone who wants to see more women's wrestling, please check this out. Like, it's clearly beloved. Look at this. Like, 3 people voted it their match of the year. And I can't really quibble with that. I don't hate the idea that someone would think this is their match of the year. It's the pinnacle of an extremely fun feud in Japan, and I'm glad it's on here. I wish it were a little higher, but I hope it gets more eyes on it, because look at all these people who are writing about it quite glowingly. I think it's that kind of match that when you see it, it will draw quite a strong reaction from you. It's really genuinely that great. This is just a pairing that doesn't work for me. I don't know what it is. Even the most lauded match they've ever had, which was the Best of the Super Juniors, I just didn't like it. Or rather, I didn't love it. I thought the Best of the Super Juniors match was probably their second best match. I think their best one was from last year's G1. I liked that they were constrained with the time limit. I thought that did wonders for what they had been doing. But yeah, even in 2019, when I was genuinely enjoying Will Ospreay's year, that match, the one that people really held up as his best work, I just never liked it. So this is clearly just a pairing that doesn't do it for me, and I know we're gonna encounter it later on in the list, and I don't think I have too much to say more about this particular encounter. This was probably the best Stardom, no, the second best. This was the second best Stardom match of the year. There is one better. I cannot recall if it's on the list. We will find out a little later. But top number 22. You know what? I guess I know that the VOW voting pool watches a lot of Bushi Road Wrestling, and if that's our sample pool, then yeah, this is probably one of the better Bushi Road main events that we had all year. So fair enough. You'd think I'd love this match more than I do. I think it's notable. I think you should definitely see it. It's like on the border of great, but I don't know. I guess I'd just seen too many of Suzuki's matches in the States before this, and this match isn't really reinventing the wheel. Much like a lot of what Minoru Suzuki did in the States this year, it happened just so we could say it happened. Instead of trying to really get something special out of it. Yeah, it's very good. Is it a top 20 match of the year? No. I think people are just happy it happened, and I think people were quite endeared to the circumstances of it happening. It happened for free. It was on YouTube. It was on a pre-show. So I think a lot of that lends to the kind of myth-making of this match. But really, it was just another Minoru Suzuki match, if you know what I mean. I watched this at the time. I thought it was great at the time. I never revisited it. I don't really want to revisit it because I would just like to continue believing it was great. I've kind of soured on Tam Nakano in the time since, so we're just gonna preserve this in my flawed memory. Of course, I love Bryan versus Eddie. Two of my favorite members of the AEW roster. But yeah, this was never really in contention for me in terms of like very top elite level tiers of the year. It probably top 30. I don't know if top 18. That's mostly just me not really getting over thinking that the finish was just a little silly. I'm a big fan of both those guys, and Eddie Kingston is someone that I always say feels incredibly real and authentic all the time. And while the finish is something that I could completely believe Eddie Kingston would do, it just took a little too much suspension of disbelief for me. And maybe if that was a little different, I would have it much higher. But that's just one of those small things that I'm nitpicking at in what's obviously a great match. I think this is their N1 final? Is this the N1 final, or is this the Broadway for a chance at the GHC title? Okay, this is the N1 final, which I thought was definitely the better of the two, in that I thought the Broadway was bad, but we'll get into that later. Yeah, I liked this match. I thought it was great. I thought it was the one Noah main event this year that really clicked for me. They just kick each other really hard. Look at the names. We're not reinventing the wheel in terms of match structure here. They're not gonna do something overly complex. Alright, they're gonna kick each other really hard until someone loses. I thought it worked here. It did not work in a different circumstance, which I think we're gonna get into later, but we'll see. Oh, there it is. That's funny. That's funny that they're back to back. Wow, yeah, no, did not like the hour draw. I thought it was incredibly one note. I can only watch these guys kick each other for so long, no matter how good the kicks are. And yeah. It's really that simple for me. They didn't have 60 minutes of material, and I felt like my time was being wasted, to be perfectly honest. I know a lot of people commented in my year-end list, where's all the Noah? Well, now you're getting some of my thoughts. Clearly it's not on the list because A, I didn't watch it, or B, I didn't like it. And for Noah, it's usually B. I'm sorry to say, it's just not for me. Great match. This feels like a very good placement for it at number 14. Quite happy where it is. Amazing match. My number 2 of the year, they even used my little blurb down here. You don't need to read it. I talked about it in my year-end video, if you've seen that. I get why people don't love it as much as I do. There is an element of sloppiness to it. It's just kind of slapped together, but for me, that was always part of the appeal. It was always supposed to be messy and rough to me, and I guess I'm happy to see it at number 13. I don't think that's an awful placement. The people who do love it clearly love it a lot. 4 people had it as their match of the year, and for the longest time, well, I say the longest time, it was a month. I was assuming this was going to be my match of the year, but something else took its place. Yeah, one of the better New Japan matches of the year. Probably a top 5 New Japan match of the year. I don't love it this much to have it at number 12, but it's a great match. Shingo and the Never Openweight title are a great pair with each other. And that's part of the reason that his year kind of took a dive for me, is just taking him away from that belt and putting him in the IWGP title scene. It felt like it misses a lot of the appeal of why Shingo worked in New Japan, especially last year when I thought he was easily one of the best wrestlers of the year. And by last year, I mean 2020, not 2021. So there you go. Didn't like it. I thought it was boring. I've clearly not enjoyed Kenny Omega's run as the world champion. I don't think he did anything special. I thought Hangman Page, I could see his effort. It didn't come together for me. The pacing was off. Everything was just a little bit off. I'm glad Hangman won, but this was not the match to really showcase to me that Hangman's this top level wrestler. Luckily, he would have a chance to prove me wrong in a different match, which we will be getting to. Now we can look at the top 10 matches. You already saw number 1. It's up there. Whatever. You guys saw that coming. Here we go. Number 10. We have Tanahashi versus Shingo Takagi. I'm not going to open them all up individually. I don't really need to see the blurbs. I don't really want to be directly addressing any of the points. I just want to share what I thought of these matches. Shingo versus Tanahashi in for the Never Openweight title, I thought was the lesser of the 2 Shingo Tana matches. And I only really thought that after watching them again. I thought it lost a little something. When I watched it back, you can tell Tanahashi is aging. He's really physically not where he was, and it's quite obvious when you're watching. The dude is waddling through most of his matches, and yet he's able to still do magic when it comes to pacing, when it comes to making a comeback, when it comes to match structure. So I understand why people love it this much. There was a time in the year when I maybe could have had it this high. I think it's a little too high as is right now. That's just me. Thunder Rosa versus Britt Baker in the Lights Out match. I thought it was notable enough at the time. I enjoyed the visuals of Britt Baker's bloody face. But when you watch it back, I don't know, man. It's supposed to be this match that embodies like a new level of violence that we haven't seen from women on a national stage. But when you strip away the blood, I didn't really get that. They were taking, the usual bumps that we'll see most of the time. Did they do thumbtacks? I can't remember. They might have done thumbtacks. And that's certainly different enough from anything that's done in the WWE. But the stuff with the ladders and the tables, like, we've seen women's matches now in the WWE where it's about the same level of brutality. And the only real defining factor for this match that seemed to take it to the next level was the blood. And hey, it was a great blade job from Britt. I think Thunder Rosa actually also bladed in this, but it did not look quite as good. Just a lot of factors here that when I watched it again at the end of the year, it just kept taking away from it. Part of it is that I was bummed out that coming out of the match, Britt was the star, even though Thunder Rosa had won this match. I've not loved too much of what Britt has been doing since. I feel like she's failed to really recapture that energy that was in this match. And even in this match, in a bubble, that visual and that charisma that she had on this night, it really only takes the match so far for me. I did not watch Okada Ospreay in full. I saw the last 10-15 minutes as it happened, and I didn't love it. So I didn't really care to see the whole thing. Sorry. Kota Ibushi versus Jay White, I did watch in full. I watched it in full twice, and both times it was incredibly disappointing because I love this pairing. I think they're one of the most guaranteed quality pairings you could have in New Japan, and I thought their Dome match was by far their worst affair. It was stretched out. It felt long. I could see the structural ideas that Jay and Ibushi were putting into it, but it just wasn't coming together. It didn't feel like it justified the length. For some reason, it's the longest New Japan Dome main event ever, and for the life of me, I don't understand why you would do that with Jay White. Jay White, who's the chicken shit heel, goes the longest in the Dome ever, and then there's no follow-up on that whatsoever. They pack him off to the States, and he never wrestles that long again. No one pushes him that far again. It looked like he was gonna turn face. He never turned face. I don't understand this match. I didn't understand it when it happened. I didn't understand it in retrospect, seeing how it fit in the year. Not a good match for me. Walter versus Ilya is a great match. Fantastic match. I was shocked that I loved it as much as I did on rewatch because I thought it was great the first time, but the second time it really was hitting in a way I didn't expect. I thought it was cleverer than their 2020 match. It is nowhere near their most famous match from the 16-carat final. I don't think you can match that in the WWE. That's just not possible given the environment and the circumstances of working in the WWE. And you're not gonna top that match when with Gunther. Sorry. Alright, we're gonna get into this one. 10 people had it as their match of the year. 58 people had it on their ballots. And if you had asked me after I first saw this, I probably would have been one of them. I thought it was great when I first saw it. But even then, there were things about it that worried me. I didn't like that they did an overtime because it felt to me like Stardom was continuing to push the boundaries on main event match length, and I didn't like where that was headed. I had seen what it had done to New Japan, and I feel like they were going long. It's been said before, and I'm sorry, but I felt like they just went long just to prove that they could go long, and it did not work for me on the second watch. I could not finish it on the second watch because the first half of it, the first act, maybe the first 10-15 minutes, it just bored me. It did. It bored me the second time I watched it, and I knew seeing those first 15 minutes that it was not worth sticking around for the full 37-minute runtime because I don't think anything they did, even if I still enjoyed it, was going to support the kind of hollowness of that first act. And I hate to say this about Shuri because I want so badly to like Shuri. Okay, she has Pinay descent in her blood. It's just second nature for a Filipino to want to support another Filipino, even if it's just a fraction of their lineage, their bloodline. And yeah, I just have not been enjoying Shuri's matches this year. I thought the Momo Watanabe match was excellent. I recommend people seeing that from the 5-star Grand Prix final, but I have not enjoyed her matches with Utami Hayashishita. And to be perfectly honest, I have not really enjoyed too many Utami matches in general. So there you go. Number 4, Shingo versus Ospreay. I watched this one. Didn't like it. I don't know. Like I said earlier, it's a pairing that doesn't work for me. I don't like their chemistry. I don't like how they work together in general. And this was just much more of the same. Number 3 is my match of the year. Adam Page versus Bryan Danielson. Let's see how many people had it match of the year. 19 people said it was match of the year. Myself included. It was included on 105 of the ballots. I thought I've talked about this enough. It's in my year-end video. I wrote an article about it. Check those out instead. Someone told me on Twitter that the race between the top 3 matches was incredibly close this year. I'm gonna take a look at the breakdown of the scores and the points a little later. But yeah. Number 2 is what I had hoped would be number 1. I knew people loved Hangman versus Bryan, but I also knew that they didn't love it as much as me. I also knew that 60 minutes is quite an ask for any wrestler, regardless of quality. That's always going to divide people a little bit. And on paper, I thought that Bryan versus Omega was just like the easy consensus match of the year. I thought that this was the match that appealed to the broadest audience. I thought this was gonna be like the slam dunk match of the year when it happened, just because when you look at the names Danielson versus Omega, it's so obviously set up to be a dream match, and they did deliver that. I thought this was easily people's matches of the year. And when someone told me that the consensus had shifted, I was not shifted rather, but apparently it wasn't ever there at all. I was genuinely surprised, and we're gonna get to that in a bit. But yeah, this is another match I've talked about a lot. It is an excellent match. It completely deserves to be in top 5. I wouldn't have it at number 2, but its placement does not anger me at all. I think it's wonderful. It's by far the best Kenny Omega match of the year. 14 people had it as their match of the year, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. I thought it had that broad appeal. But apparently it wasn't enough, because number one, the Voices of Wrestling match of the year is the Lucha Brothers versus the Young Bucks in the cage match at AEW All Out. 39 people had it as their match of the year. That's more than double. Young Bucks versus the Lucha Bros ended up on 107 ballots. Bryan versus Kenny ended up on 122. And I think that gap kind of speaks to what I had said, that on paper, Danielson versus Omega is just much more appealing in a more instant way. The reason I hadn't thought that the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Bros was actually in contention for like the consensus, the wider audience's match of the year, was that the Young Bucks are so divisive as an act. They've gotten so much flack their entire careers at this point, basically, right? That I thought that would just divide people far too much for it to gain this level of critical acclaim, especially when they're against the Lucha Bros, who share a lot of the same general criticisms that people level at the Young Bucks. People will typically say that these are two very spotty teams. They focus more on spots than stories. And I thought that was gonna hinder its chances. But for some reason, this match really just spoke to a lot of people, because the number of people who had it as their match of the year just far outweighs any other match of the year. Like, the people who love this match just are fully drawn into it, and it just spoke to so many people. Like, look at all these write-ups. I'm not gonna go through them because I'm not looking to like argue any specific points with any particular critic. This was their opinion. They submitted of their free will. I also submitted my opinions to the very same ballot. I'm just kind of shocked, honestly, that this was the match that did it for people. Yeah, I watched it today because I knew I was going to be recording this video. And let me tell you, I'm just I hinted at it in my 2022 video because I knew people were going to say, well, what about Lucha Bros versus Young Bucks? So I'm just going to get into it here and just say it now. I think this is a bad match. I've watched it twice now. I watched it live as it happened. I rewatched it today in preparation for this video, and I don't know what to tell you guys. I thought it was a bad match. Like, the little blurb at the top here says an emotional and physical roller coaster of a cage match, and I had so much trouble understanding the emotional aspect of this match. There was limited build-up because the Lucha Bros won the tournament to earn this match, and there was like 2 weeks of build, which I couldn't tell you was particularly emotional coming into the pay-per-view. I think generally people assumed that because of the cage match stipulation and because of how they were screwed earlier in the year, that this was going to be the Jurassic Express. I thought that would have been a much more sensible and much more emotionally driven feud, if only because the booking supported it. When they come into the match, the opening moments see just the usual Young Bucks Lucha Bros shtick. There's nothing different about it to any of their other matches. It starts exactly with the same kind of stereo offensive combinations. You can clearly see that it's thought out miles ahead of time. Nothing felt organic or emotionally driven. They were just doing their usual match inside of a cage. Yeah, I don't get it. I rewatched the match today, and I will say that there were things that I noticed. I came to, I don't think the word is appreciate, but I acknowledge. Okay, this match wasn't as formless as I had thought it was in my live viewing. That's not to say that it was well structured. I just thought it was better structured than it had been in my memory. Because really, this match did not make sense to me on a structural level. They're doing their usual back and forth stuff to open. I guess you could call it a babyface shine for the Lucha Bros, but they're really back and forth, countering each other like they always do. They do that double do-si-do, grab the arm and spin around spot where they charge into both corners, and like nothing about that screams violent or emotional. And then the Young Bucks always find a way to transition into control, but the first there were 2 points in the match where they attempted to begin a control heat segment, which is something you'd kind of want from an emotional grudge match. You want the babyfaces to feel sympathetic. You want them to be kind of down and fight back, fiery fury, all of that. And the first time the Young Bucks try to begin a heel heat segment, it's just cut off immediately. Like, the Lucha Bros just go right back into offense, and it completely destroys the momentum, the emotional momentum of the Young Bucks trying to make the Lucha Bros more sympathetic. And I have to give the Young Bucks credit here, because it felt like through the entire runtime, they were the ones trying to impose some actual structure into the match. The Young Bucks were the ones trying to go, okay, we have to get some heat on the Lucha Bros. And they were finally able to. They were finally able to transition into a heat segment. And I couldn't even tell you how. It's not like they were sneaky or cheating about it, as a heel should be. I know it's a no disqualification match, so you can't really be sneaky. But just the ways that they were getting into their control segment, the transitions they were doing, it was just the usual things that they always do in all of their matches. But the Young Bucks try. They really do try. They try. They bust open Pentagon. They bust open Phoenix. They tear at the masks, like, for a bit. They, like, instantly give up on trying to go for the mask. It's not an element in this match at all. After the first time they try it, they're just like, oh, we did that. We're bad guys now. We're just not gonna try that again. We're just gonna do all our usual stuff. And the Lucha Bros, I struggle to find them sympathetic because their selling is just not for me. Phoenix's whole idea of selling is kind of like the wobbly sell, where he's always sort of kind of drunkenly selling on 2 feet, and it always feels on the wrong side of over the top. Like, there's a delicate balance there where it could work, and I feel like Phoenix always just crosses right over the edge into the part of it where I can't quite enjoy it as much as I could. I don't think Penta is particularly known for being a great seller. He didn't do much in here to convince me otherwise, so I struggled to empathize with the baby faces of the match. And then the Lucha Bros make their comeback, and as soon as they get into their comeback, Phoenix does this big string of offense where he's getting back into it. He's trying to fight from behind. And then as soon as they get through that initial Phoenix comeback, it's just immediately right back to just doing their usual spots. Like, there's a point in this match where they stand in a circle and they do that classic PWG tag bit where everyone hits a super kick on everyone. And I know that's not a match-breaking spot where I'll immediately hate something. It's just one of those things you've seen a lot if you have seen it. And I thought it was especially ineffective in this match because, like, the key to this was that you are rooting for the Lucha Bros to finally get it done. And then they just do this spot where everyone is super kicking each other in a circle and none of the selling is particularly great. And then they all fall down, but then they all kick back up again. And it's just such a contrived spot in a match that was meant to be kind of like a gritty, more violent presentation to this rivalry, this big blow-off. And yeah, it just completely zapped all the emotion out of it. I thought it was bad. It's interesting to me because I actually went back to look at the history of the Voices of Wrestling matches of the year. And I want to share that with you guys. In 2013, their match of the year was Kazuchika Okada versus Hiroshi Tanahashi from Invasion Attack. In 2014, it was the G1 block match between AJ Styles and Minoru Suzuki. In 2015, it was the Tokyo Dome match between Shinsuke Nakamura and Kota Ibushi. In 2016, it was the G1 final between Tetsuya Naito and Kenny Omega. In 2017, it was Kazuchika Okada versus Katsuyori Shibata. In 2018, it was Okada versus Omega 4, their No Time Limits 2 out of 3 Falls match. In 2019, it was the Best of the Super Juniors final between Shingo and Will Ospreay. And last year, it was the Young Bucks versus Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. And looking at that history, this is comfortably, in my opinion, the worst match of all of the matches that I just named. Like, I'm looking at this lineage of the Voices of Wrestling match of the year, and outside of Shingo versus Ospreay, where I am apparently a bit of an outlier, I think all these matches that I just named from 2013 up to 2020, I think those are all great matches. I think they're genuinely great matches, and I fully understand the people that have them as number one. And in 2021, this has been, like, by far the most disconnected I've ever felt from the consensus match of the year, because I just struggled to see its qualities. I get it on a visceral level that the things they're doing are athletically impressive. There's flash there. I get that. But I don't know how that made the jump to match of the year, even just in comparison to what had won from Voices of Wrestling in years past. I don't get it. I don't get it. I'll tell you what I did like from this match is that Penta's celebration with his daughter after the bell had rung did feel emotional. It did feel genuine. And that was the only part of the match that felt at all real to me. At all. Everything else in it was just the usual contrived, over-the-top Lucha Bros versus Young Bucks stuff. And I don't know. Maybe people carried over that emotion from Penta's win and they applied it to the rest of the match. Or maybe, you know what? Maybe they just really love this match for reasons that I personally will never be able to fully empathize with. There you go. But here you see what I mean, that because of the larger voter base, the matches at the very top of the list are always going to taper down to just the most major companies in the world. We have the two top national companies in North America with AEW and WWE, and then in Japan we just have Bushiroad, and we don't. It's Noah that's kind of creeping up as sort of the quote unquote. I don't want to say they're an underdog, but they're kind of making a resurgence in the larger wrestling consciousness. But yeah, and like when Pro Wrestling Noah is like your dark horse pick, I don't feel like they're getting the kind of diversity at the top levels of the list that maybe they would have wanted. Yeah, I want to see more indie wrestling on here. I would like to see more Lucha Libre on here, but we work with what the year has given us, and I think it's perfectly fair that AEW took a fair chunk of the discussion space. They made a lot of moves. They had a lot of great matches. Clearly, I agreed with many of these picks, if not all of them. But yeah, those are just some of the limitations that I feel the Voices of Wrestling Match of the Year ballot has. Not entirely of their own fault. It's just something that would naturally happen when you try to open up the field to as many people as possible. You start to really just encourage the kind of top level, most accessible wrestling to be the most discussed. And that's not their fault. That's just how opening up the field works. I was glad to have my voice heard in this process. I'm glad that I was able to get some matches on there that maybe might not have been if I hadn't placed them on my own ballot. I highly encourage everyone who checked out the Voices of Wrestling Match of the Year list to pay a little more attention to the promotions that you don't know. Especially the promotions that don't really get discussed. Everyone's going to be talking about AEW. Most people still talk about New Japan. Pro Wrestling Noah is becoming another popular topic among online members of the wrestling community, people who write about and create content about wrestling. So look deeper, kind of explore the things that fell between the cracks, and I think you'll find some interesting stuff. I've pointed out some of those already going through the list. I've talked about some of those things in my own year-end list, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I think I've rambled on enough. Again, clearly these are all just my opinions, and you're free to enjoy and love any of these matches. I am just sharing my own thoughts on what came out to be the consensus of the year. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't like the flippy match. So yeah, there you have it. That's the Voices of Wrestling Top 100 Matches of the Year. As it always is a mixed bag. Mostly good to great matches. You're gonna get a few stinkers in there, at least from my personal experience. But yeah, explore, stay curious, look for more wrestling, see what appeals to you, and see beyond what is just the majority that people love, and you will find interesting, unique, fascinating wrestling that speaks to you and appeals to you. I think that if everyone just stayed a little more curious and kept digging, they'll find something that they really love and really enjoy. And if it happens to be one of those matches in here that I wasn't fond of, then hey, good for you. At least somebody's enjoying it, right? Thank you all for sticking around and listening to me ramble about this particular topic. Thank you to everybody who stuck around till the end of this video. Thank you for watching me and listening to me share my thoughts on the Voices of Wrestling Top 100 Matches of the Year. I'm leaving a link to it in the description below so that you can peruse it for yourself. I'm also leaving a link to my own personal Match of the Year list, and I hope you guys can find something in there that you might enjoy and that you might not have known about as well. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, leave a comment down below, share it with your friends online, and if you want to see more from me with my year-end retrospectives and the King's Road series, all of that good stuff, hit the subscribe button, batter that notification bell, smash its face into the cage. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much, and have a good one.